neither male nor female, by the name of Johnny. Johnny wakes up in the morning, and the first things that Johnny does is picks up Johnny's iPhone and starts scrolling through the feeds. So when Johnny gets the news in the morning, anyone here use RSS feeds in order to read the news? What feeds do you have that you read on a regular basis?
Let's see, JZA. I read Mashable, and I do custom searches for.
Jenny?
I pretty much keep up to date with all the Jewish blogs and Jewish news.
So in other words, we have two people here in the same room that are experiencing the world in a vastly different way. And yet in many ways, your worlds, even if you geographically are apart, are much closer today than many people who live down the block from me, right? That experience of experiencing the world through a customized filter is an experience that we didn't know before. Because generally you get a newspaper, you'd share that newspaper with hundreds of thousands of other people because they would all be reading the same stuff. The people who determined what was in a newspaper were in corporate. They decided what was important on the front page and what to get buried on A14. And your world was determined, your reality in many ways was determined by an external actor. It's not like that anymore. On the way to school, Johnny twitters or tweets his Johnny's breakfast plans and then cross-post to Facebook. Anyone here use Twitter? Sure, what do you use Twitter for?
My dating disasters.
Who reads your tweets?
I'm not really sure.
Exactly. And
Hopefully
that's
not your
something.
dates, right?
What?
Hopefully not your dates.
Hopefully not my dates.
But that's something that has never happened before. In this room, we have someone who's experiencing something that even 3 years ago would have been preposterous. That you would be broadcasting your experiences to the world and letting other people interact with them. But nowadays, it sounds completely normal to me. Same thing with sharing your location. Foursquare, Gowalla, whatever it is that people are going to be using 3, 4, 5 years from now. We have come to a place and time in this world that the noise that we're living in also includes our physical reality. That is, you could be walking down the street, reading your feeds, you can see that Johnny posted where Johnny's going to breakfast, and you automatically switch your direction, right? So that noise is something that you're also competing with. During class, Johnny opens a Google Doc to collaborate on notes. Anyone here use Google Docs? Yeah, Andrea, what's the key feature that differentiates Google Docs from just taking notes on anything else?
Collaboration.
Collaboration. Well, what does that mean?
Basically, you're not working in a vacuum. Like you don't have your own notes that you then have to compare with 3 other people's notes if you want to see the quote got it all. With a Google Docs context, you can basically it happens simultaneously that you're basically adding information in one shared document.
And once that document is done, whose knowledge is that?
Shared.
Exactly. And the idea of intellectual ownership, the idea of saying that is mine, is becoming less and less relevant. Because as people start to collaborate in terms of their knowledge, well, what's the difference between an A student and a B student? An A student knows how to kiss the teacher's ass, and a B student generally gets A's in certain things and C's in others. Right? So a B student, there's nothing wrong with a B student. B students are often much better at certain subjects. Just they're not as good at all subjects. And A students might not be specialized, jack of all trades, or I'm ragging on A students here. You guys suck. but on a basic level, we have come to accept the fact that everyone needs to be good at everything. And that's how we rank people in schools. And people go through life winnowing down based upon whether they're good at a lot of things, so that all the A students go to this college, and the A students go to that graduate school, etc., as opposed to recognizing that different people can get different pieces of knowledge out of the world. And when you're collaborating, you're sharing your information, that framework shifts. Because all of a sudden, the kid that's much better in audio recall, but not as good at figuring out math problems, can help the opposite. And that changes the way that we interact. after school, Johnny goes to a meetup at a friend's house. What's a meetup? Anyone here use meetup? What's a meetup, Justin?
First, it's a website that has a listing of a lot of different types of meetings throughout your city. You can find one that isn't a topic that is of interest to you, and you can, on the website, say that you're going to be attending it, and typically you have to pay, just because each of the meetups themselves are having to pay the website to host the information for that particular meetup on the website, but pay a nominal fee and you get to go to an event with a lot of other people that show some interest in you.
That's the fundamental element, right? Do you have to know the people that you're going to go to an event with? You just share something in common with them. So we could all be sitting in this room. We all know one another now. We could all very much like chess. But one of us could decide to go join a meetup right across the street with people that we have absolutely no clue, just based on the very fact that we like chess. Our choice to be able to join and enter into different social circles based on the identity we choose at that moment is almost unbounded in our society. That is our ability to cross over, to change who we are, to change how we fundamentally describe and define ourselves, as opposed to me being someone who's interested in developing the capacity of the Jewish people, which brings me here, to me being someone who loves chess. Different identity, a different story, a different narrative. So on a fundamental level, what's changed since Herzl's time? First of all, no top hats. Funny story, and I love to tell this story because it goes to show what Herzl really was as a person. Herzl was riding on a train to Basel. Basel was where the first Zionist Congress was held, right? And does anyone here know the story of why they chose Basel? Because they got kicked out of everywhere else. No Jewish community was willing to host the Zionist Congress. And Basel was a crappy little town with almost no Jews. I don't think there were actually any Jews there. That had a casino hall that was about to be basically torn down. And Herzl said, hold on, I'll rent it out for you. And he got Jews from around the world, mostly a lot of them from Eastern Europe, which this is the first time really that you had this conference of Eastern European Jews who were considered together with the high-minded Western European Jews to come together in one conference. And he was going there with his friend and collaborator, which I am so embarrassed that his name is right now slipping my mind.
Give us a clue.
Damn it, I'll remember it in a little bit, but I can't believe that. I tell the story like hundreds of times and I cannot remember. He's buried in Tel Aviv. He was actually living in America. He was a philosopher and very well known in literary theory. Max Nordau. Max, he was going with Max Nordau on the train, and they're going, from Germany. Where was it? I think it's from Germany through Zurich all the way to Basel, and they're about to get off, and Herzl goes, okay, we have to go change. And Max said, what are you talking about change? He said, you didn't bring your top hat and tailcoat. And Max said, yeah, I don't wear that. I have a regular suit. And Herzl said, I'm not letting you into the conference without top hat and tailcoat. And Nordau said, then I'm not coming to the conference. And Herzl said, fine, you're not coming to the conference. And Nordau was like, wait, are you serious? And Herzl was like, yeah. And Max had to go to Zurich, buy a top hat and tailcoat, and come back in order to become the conference. Why? Because Herzl realized the importance of theater, the importance of making the first Zionist Congress, producing it to such a degree that people felt that they were in the place of excellence, of loyalty, right? And so that's just a fun story to tell that brings to bear this concept of the experience economy, which is something that we're going to be talking about a little bit later. The change of speed has affected the change in life. That is, it's the difference between taking an ocean liner and taking an airliner. On a basic level, you can say, what's the difference? So you cross the Atlantic in a day as opposed to 3 weeks, if at all, right? Well, there's a fundamental quality difference here. The change in speed has changed the way that we operate because our time is becoming more and more precious. The fact that Scrabble is competing with your volunteer opportunities or your desire to watch a TV show or go to a movie or what have you, is just a fact of life. There's nothing wrong with it, but that's what it is. Our fundamental economy has boiled down to one element, and that's attention. And in order to compete in the attention economy, the key element is relevance. It's the value that you provide any one individual. But how do we figure out how that affects organizations, and how do organizations change it? Well, there's a great quote by a man named Robert Cover. Bob Cover was a professor of law at Yale University. He revolutionized the study of law and the philosophy of law, or what's called jurisprudence. He was also a Ramah kid, that was a Talmud scholar, and just a genius all around. He died at an early age. Anyone want to read this quote and tell us? You want to read it for us? Tell us what it means, what they think it means. Shelby, you look like you want to do it.
We inhabit a nomos, a normative universe. We constantly create and maintain a world of right and wrong, of lawful and unlawful, of valid and void. And yet, no set of legal institutions or prescriptions exists apart from the narratives that locate it and give it meaning. For every constitution there is an epic, for each decalogue a scripture.
Anyone want to parse that? What does it mean? Any ideas? It's okay, you can go out on a limb. It's not class, you're not going to be graded.
Every group or subgroup in the universe or the world has like some kind of story behind how, what makes certain things right and what makes certain things wrong.
Right. So let's give a good example of that. Thou shalt not kill. It says it very clearly, right? Al tirtzah. One of the 10 Commandments, thou shalt not kill. Anyone here read the Bible lately?
Yes.
Do people not kill in it?
No.
They kill a lot, right? So how does one define thou shalt not kill? You define it based upon the story, based upon the norms that are taught through the narrative. So thou shalt not kill in a Jadian context, in the context of the Jade philosophy or religion that is in India, is defined very differently, where they wear face masks so that they don't breathe in bugs, they make sure that they don't step on any ants while they walk, than in the Jewish context, where you see the Almighty God smiting people left and right. Right? The very element of law, what we determine as right or wrong, is determined by the story that we tell, by how we explain who we are. And that's fundamental to how organizations run in a weird way. Because if you tell the story of yourself in one way, if I tell the story of myself as somebody who is, who's interested in playing chess, and I go through my life with that as kind of the veneer, as I'm excited by the game of chess and its strategic depth and the way that people can think steps ahead, etc., you will think of me in one way. I will make choices in one way. I choose to be in certain places as opposed to other places. I use my time in one way as opposed to another way. But if I tell you the story of myself as a youth movement activist and the Zionist youth movements who moved to Israel and came back and is working with present tense and the like, then you will perceive me in another way. And I'll perceive myself in another way. And I'll make choices based upon that story. That is, the way that we choose to operate based upon the story that we tell. And here, I'm going to give an example of an organization and how that affects an organization's life, not a person's life, right? So, this is Re'ut. Anyone know about Re'ut? Yeah, do you want to tell us a little bit about Re'ut?
I don't actually know what they do. I know
Okay,
someone who
so
just
very
started
good
working
question.
for them, so I'm
Okay.
interested to know.
Does anyone know what Re'ut does as an organization?
Nope.
It's just a good example. Re'ut is a think tank, an Israeli think tank, that brings together new approaches to policy for Israeli government officials and public officials, as well as now they're operating with Jewish organizations around the world.
So I know they focus on Jewish education a little bit, because I know this person's...
They're now starting to. Yeah, that's their new horizons. They got a donor that was very interested in new policy for education and Jewish identity, right? So they're a think tank, okay? And they wanted to create